introduce Noelle and Sara, who work at the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. They're our presenters today, sharing about the series that they worked on with folks at the University of Dayton called Breaking Open the Sin of Racism. So I'm going to hand things over to Noelle and to Sara. I will also be on this call. If you have any tech issues or questions, go ahead and reach out to me.
Great. So I'm going to start with a quick background of where this program came from and just the super basic summary of what it is. And then Noelle will go on her way with some more specific explanations from there. So super fast summary, glazed over backstory is that a group that I work with up here in Dayton, but actually before I even came on board here, I think about 7 years ago, began an anti-racism task force, and they were all Catholics and mostly white suburban Catholics. So they decided they really needed to broaden that if they were going to do something good and not do something harmful, and to make sure that they were listening to all voices and really being a helpful part of the community. So they decided that the task force, even though it was a Catholic organization, that task force would be interfaith. And then they went on inviting different people in the community from different faith communities, different races, different ethnicities, different cultures, so on and so forth, to join that task force. And eventually what came out of that was a workshop where they used different videos and eventually used mainly one video to have a workshop and have small group dialogues around that. And the workshop was all about racism and white privilege. And these were held in the community for anyone in the community and mostly held at libraries. And they were wildly successful and held lots of times in the Dayton, Ohio area. And they were, broadly from this Catholic organization, but they were not Catholic workshops at all. And we would always make sure people understood that. Eventually, our anti-racism task force for the overall Archdiocese of Cincinnati, because these were so successful and really helpful and always had lots of great feedback, we decided to do them for the entire Archdiocese through that task force, and held a couple, and they were helpful. But we found that who was attracted to ours were Catholics. And these workshops weren't really Catholic. And we really talked a lot about how we'd like them to be. And we want this to be something that people realize is an integral part of the Catholic faith. And it can be kind of a faith formation piece, as well as learning specifics around racism and white privilege. And so from there, I just randomly one day, when we had kind of been vaguely discussing this, and then some different issues popped up, and I just was like, I'm going to email these two professors at the University of Dayton that I had worked with before on issues of racism. And I knew that they were amazing resources for this. And I emailed them and said, hey, would you all be willing to maybe get on Zoom with me, and I could record you doing presentations I've heard you do before. On one is a sociologist and kind of takes it from that angle, but she's also Catholic. And the other is more of a historian, but also a Catholic. And they've done great presentations and done them together and kind of feed off of each other. And I was like, can we just hop on Zoom and record that? And they were like, well, yeah, but maybe we could invite a few other experts at the university that cover other topics in this. And we, with the anti-racism task force and with these professors and then other people they invited, we had many conversations where it basically turned into having 8 experts make 8 videos, and University of Dayton production made the videos with them and edited them, and they turned really high quality. And then we worked with them and our task force on creating a discussion guide for those that we can use for a workshop or other people can use separately. And it took probably a 1.5 years or 2 years. I mean, it was just kind of a long process, but it just kept turning into something bigger and better. So we let that take its course. And we wanted it all to be available for anyone to use. So that's all on YouTube and on our website, and the discussion guides on our website and so forth, and even plans for how to do it as a workshop the way that we've done it and tested and had good results with. So that's the basic history of this and the basic overview of what it is. And I'm going to let Noelle take over from here to show you the website and kind of show you a lot of the specifics.
Great. So I'm Noelle Collis-DeVito, and I actually work in the Office for Persons with Disabilities and the Respect Life Office for the Archdiocese. So we're really focused on that seamless garment approach to things. We social action and Respect Life work together. And I also serve on the Catholic Social Action Commission for the Archdiocese and then on the Anti-Racism Task Force. But I will be leaving shortly to go to UD, which I'm really excited about. I'll be doing campus ministry and social justice stuff at UD. But so to dive into this a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the webpage. And we can, some of you are probably familiar with this website that we've created already, but we'll send out a link so that you have access to it and make sure that you have the resources that you need. Everything that you need is on this webpage, and you are welcome to use anything you want off this webpage, however you want. We've put it out there as an opportunity for people to take it and run with it, however their needs are for their parish. So like Sara said, our primary focus is parishes or organizations that are more faith-oriented, right? But you could do this you could use this in a secular organization too. Some of the videos are more explicitly Catholic, so you would just have to preview those and pick which ones you would use and which ones you wouldn't. And it's meant to be used as an 8-part series, but you also could use it just as like one video at a time if you want, like if you just wanted to focus on one aspect. So that's the great thing about this resource, is that you could really use it in a variety of different ways. And I'm actually hoping to take this to UD and use it with the students there. So we'll probably be adding some stuff to this website as we grow and learn more about this program. So as Sara said, it just explains a little bit of a series summary there. And our primary goals and objectives with this are to increase awareness of the invisibility of privilege, systemic racism, anti-racism, and the predominance of whiteness in our nation, particularly within the context of the Catholic Church, and to foster dialogue among parishioners, right? We want to make sure that people in our community are having these important conversations and getting a little deep with things so that they can start expanding their mind and growing in their understanding of these key concepts. So further down, we've got our videos. As I said, there are 8. The way that we have set this up, we ran this through a couple of like focus groups to see how it was received by people and took their feedback and adjusted things accordingly. And the best laid plan that we have found that isn't too much of a time commitment for people would be to have 4 sessions. If you're doing it on Zoom, you can get away with about an 1.5 hour session, but if you're going to be in person, probably 2 hours would be better. The first session, you would show the second and third video, utilizing that first video as an intro, right? Everybody watch this somehow before you come to this first session. Give them a little bit of homework ahead of time so that they have that under their belt already. And then we just do 2 videos at a time. They tend to connect really well with each other if you do it that way. So part 2 and part 3, part 4 and part 5, part 6 and part 7. And then the last day, you just do the last final video, which is a summary again of everything that brings it all together and ties it all up in a nice little bow. And then have those big important discussions about what do we do next as a community, which you are welcome to take in whatever direction that you would like. And we have some resources to help with that. Down at the bottom. Each one of these videos focuses on a different perspective. Some of them are personal shared stories of experiences One of my favorite is Sister Nicole shares her own personal life experiences as a person of color and a religious Catholic sister. And I think it's really fantastic to have that perspective, but there are a lot of people that share their perspectives. And like Sara said, it's coming from different angles too. So you've got the sociological perspective, the more Catholic focused perspective about what it means to be church, just a lot of really great things. And the videos are relatively short, between 15 and 20 minutes, no longer than 20 minutes. So it gives you a great little bite of the idea, but needless to say, it does not cover the whole breadth of everything. It's just a bit of an overview to introduce the thought to people. So as we scroll down, we've got this discussion guide. The discussion guide is the only thing that we ask that you don't modify. And we've set it up as a PDF, so really it's very difficult to modify it in any way. But everything else on here is print and modify as needed. The discussion guide goes step by step through each of the videos. And there are questions that we've created along with the speakers to provide some dialogue. And it also talks a little bit about the practices for facilitating dialogue. It's a very thorough guide, and this is printable, or it can be sent to people as a PDF, and it's completely interactive. So if there's a link in it, you can click on the link and it'll take you where you need to go. We have bios of the speakers and then each of the different topics that they discuss. And the questions that they have, those reflection questions. And it also even tells you how long the video is, so you have an idea before you even watch it. One thing that we did realize, and you'll see this might look a little messy right here, but when you print it, it prints perfectly fine. We incorporated their slides into our discussion guide as well, so that if there were some important slides that people wanted to have as a visual, those are all present right there. So you don't have to worry about trying to stop the screen on a slide or anything like that. We've got it all right there for you. All right, so, and then we're going to get a little bit more into some of our materials, right? So as hosts of this event, there are different things that you should have as a resource to help you get this off the ground. One of the things that we're asking people to do is to help us let people know if you're having this event, right? If it's going to be something that's on Zoom and you're going to open it up to the community, we'll help you advertise. So you just click here to complete this form and we can help get the word out. Even if you don't want us to help you advertise and it's going to be more of a private event, just let us know so we can kind of keep track of where all of these sessions are taking place, and we can kind of publicize things a little bit that way. I saw some of you are in New York, and like we have people from all over the country. So it'd be really amazing to be able to say, we have this going in New York and it's going really well. So yeah, so help us spread the word if you can.
And I'll just say Noelle and I, and then the UD professors and lots of other volunteers put a lot of time into this. And so it's really nice to show our supervisors and so forth that the time was worth it.
Yeah.
So we would really, really appreciate it if you let us know that you're doing one of these.
Yes, great. And I see that there are some questions in the chat, and I promise I will make sure that we get to those after I kind of wrap this up a little bit here for you. So I'm going to scroll down a little further, and all of our stuff that I told you, you're welcome to take and print and modify however you need are right down here. We've got flyers that you can put together, and they're the modifiable PDFs where you just type your information in and it's all right there ready to go. We have a number of PowerPoint presentations that we like to utilize during the sessions. They were especially useful during Zoom because we did do a lot of these on Zoom, and it gives people a great visual as you're kind of working your way through this process. But it would also be great to have a PowerPoint up in person. And the questions from each session, an opening prayer, all of that's there. And Sara's going to go through that in more depth here in a little bit. And I'm going to show you what some of these things look like as well, so you can get an idea. We even have a pretty thorough leader guide that we've put together so that you can have an idea of what you need to do to prepare as you're collecting volunteers to help facilitate small groups, just some key things to think about. And lastly, down here at the bottom, we've got digging deeper. And this, I'm really proud of this part of the page. It's got a lot of really great resources. Obviously, we want to hit home on those Catholic roots, Open Wide Our Hearts is our most recent pastoral document about racism, as many of you already know. And it has a study guide that goes with it. So that would be a great opportunity if you have a small group of people that want to go deeper and maybe get a little bit more into that. That could be something to do. But we also have a ton of different resources right through here, places to go, which are predominantly in the Cincinnati area. But it would give you an idea of what to look up in your own region, right? Pastoral letters and writing, websites, articles, all of the different fun things that you can do to delve a little deeper into these particular issues of racism, power, and privilege, and to just really take a deeper look at the sin of racism and understand the implications of that in the lives of the people around us and our lives, and how to fix it and try to work to make the world a better place. One thing I do want to say before we jump into some of these resources that Sarah's going to chat about for a second is there are going to be the occasional things in these videos that specifically talk about using like Dayton as an example, right? We're going to talk about redlining in Dayton and how that really impacted the culture in the city of Dayton. Look up that information for your area and have that ready to go before you get together with your group. When you talk about that particular video, it'll give people a deeper understanding. That way they don't just think the problem's only in Dayton and Cincinnati. They can see the implications of that in their area as well. So that's just, anything that's more relevant to our archdiocese, it's applicable across the board. We just may use our own space as an example so that there is one.
And I want to say, like, most of it is not super specific Dayton, but there are places where it's just incredibly helpful for those specific examples so that you can really talk about specifics. And in that case, then it's Dayton is used. So I don't want you all to think like this is all Dayton and it's not going to make sense for us. It's not that way, but some specific examples are that way. And I just think it would really highlight how widespread the problem is if you all use your location for that. Or if you're maybe not really in a city area, maybe you're in a more rural area that's historically been all white or mostly white, I can almost guarantee there are other systemic things that have gone on there that you can find and show your group.
Yes, absolutely. So real quick, before I do the PowerPoint, Sarah, do you mind if we answer this question real quick? It says, would you primarily do mixed race groups or break into any caucuses or such for the discussions? I think from our experience, having mixed race groups is great, giving people different perspectives so that they all can hear and understand the issue from the eyes of someone else, right? And from their own lived experiences. But we don't always encounter that. Especially if you're in a predominantly white parish, you're not necessarily going to have people of color participating in these conversations. Do you want to say anything else to that, Sarah?
Yeah, so for this and then the past iterations of similar that this came out of, we really found over time we would really stress over like getting as much diversity at the workshop as possible. And it became something that we worked really hard at. And in some ways that's incredibly important and definitely a worthwhile effort, but there are some big things to keep in mind and some reasons to be okay with it not being as diverse. Some big things to keep in mind is that it's a lot to ask of a person of color to come to something like this and have to share personal things or have wounds reopened or have people staring at them, wanting them to share and they don't want to share, etc. It's a lot to ask of someone. So be careful about asking that and be incredibly respectful and maybe sometimes don't ask that. Just really keep that in mind. It's an incredibly important thing to keep in mind of how often is this person asked to do this? How painful might that be to do? What's my relationship with this person? Are they going to be able to give me say no if they aren't comfortable, etc. So really be careful with those asks and with those efforts to have as much diversity as possible. Normally I'm all for as much diversity as possible, but there's some really key things to keep in mind with that. Another thing to keep in mind is people of color don't necessarily need this as badly. This is really made for mostly made for white American Catholics, is like the main target audience. Does that mean that other people won't get anything out of it? Absolutely not. And I don't mean to make it seem like we've only ever had white American Catholics be a part of this. That's not the case. And we've had lots of really good experiences with things being more like a variety of races and diversity, and that's been great, but just being really careful with those asks and being okay with it actually not being that diverse of a group, because I promise it actually still does go well, because we have these excellent videos, and then you have facilitators and you have facts, and there are other ways for people to hear other people's stories than asking someone to repeatedly come and open up their wounds for everyone to look at. Right. So those are the things to keep in mind. I know I rambled on for a while, but I'm just really passionate about the importance of this, because it is something that I think people with incredibly good intentions accidentally do harm.
Right.
Sometimes.
We don't want to tokenize, right? Make people feel like they're a token in a process. Another question that we got is it effective if folks from multiple parishes attend the same class, and is there an optimal size? Really, the answer to that is however you want to do it, right? If you think that you would have a better poll and maybe even some good conversations by merging some parishes together, or having like a diocesan-wide or community-wide opportunity for this, that's fine. We don't necessarily have a specific size for the actual like large group, but our recommendation is that you break people into small groups that are small. So just make sure if you have 50 people coming, that you have about 10 facilitators, so that when you break down into small groups, your small groups aren't larger than 6 people a group, because you want to be able to have those important discussions and give everyone the opportunity to share, and to become familiar enough with one another that they feel comfortable enough to share. Yeah, Sarah, you're muted now. There you go. Do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, I will say when we've done workshops like this in person, the ones that have been the best, there's something about around this number that just is like, the sweet spot is around 40. Mm-hmm. It just feels very successful. It has a lot of buzz going on with the larger group, without it being overwhelming, and then very manageable small group sizes and a manageable amount of facilitators to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's like a really good rule of thumb. All right, so here's another question. Did you learn anything positive and negative from actual sessions that you weren't expecting when you developed the program? I think one of the things that we learned was take time after each session to get feedback from the participants. People may want more time in their small groups, and if they do, modify the next time that you meet, and ensure people, like, just make sure that you take the time to let people share their experience a little bit, not just with their discussions in the small group, but what do you need from us to continue to make this a positive experience as we continue on this journey together? That was something that was really beneficial.
Yeah, and then make those changes unless they don't make sense. Like, we made some changes to some of like the guidelines for dialogue. We added some things that people were like, people keep veering into this area, and it's really creating like more drama than necessary. Like, it's not being fruitful, and it's just creating issues. So one of those things was like people bringing up really partisan politics. And while those things certainly relate to this topic, people can get incredibly hung up on them and then not see the real point that's trying to be made. And so it's not it's not going to go well. If someone agrees with you, they're going to agree with you. If someone has different politics, then all they're going to hear is the thing you said that they really don't like, and they're not going to hear the real point you're making. So like, that's one of the things we added that I think was like a super good addition. And you all, if you really give that 5 minutes at the end to get feedback each time, you might get things that cause you to make changes for the future. And if any of those changes have to do with our program, please let us know, because maybe we should make a overarching change. We are always happy to entertain those things and learn more and make changes for the better.
Yes. All right. So another question. Have you ever had a person attending a session who does not believe that racism is a true issue? If so, how did you handle this? So yes, we actually invited some people to our last session, specifically that we knew kind of were struggling along those lines, but we're open enough for dialogue. What we've done, especially in a Zoom context, is we always have a home base. And at least 2 people are in the home base. So if somebody's having trouble with their small group, they can text us and say, we need you to jump into group 2. It's getting a little haggard, right? And we've never had to do that, thank God, but it may happen, right? Because this is a hot topic. It's hard for people to have discussions about this sometimes. So be sure that as the leader of this, that you're ready and prepared to diffuse if you need to, and spend some time training your small group facilitators on how to diffuse the situation if it's starting to get heated. Remind them to draw people back to those parameters that we set, and we're going to go through those pretty thoroughly here in a minute when we do our PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, and I will just add one more thing, is that, yeah, we've had people for sure, but has there been huge problems? No, because it's well done and the facts are the facts. And we believe firmly and always advertise this program. And this is really key for you all to know, that this isn't an entry-level program. This isn't really made for someone who doesn't think racism is real. Are those people going to come? Yeah, they might, but it's not that common. And especially if you advertise it not as like this super entry level, let's just all vaguely dialogue about this. No, this is for people that want to go a little bit deeper. And our naming of it is actually with that intention too, breaking open the sin of racism. That's for people that already believe racism is a sin, which, by the way, the Catholic Church is explicitly clear on. So the idea is that you're attracting people that already believe that. They might not know anything else, but they agree and believe that racism is a sin. And that's okay if they don't know anything else. This is an okay starting point. But other than that, it's not just like, oh, the first time anyone's ever thought of this. It's not really what this program's for. It's for learning a little bit more and dialoguing more with people in their community or people online. So yeah, point being, I wouldn't have tons of anxiety about that. It's not been a problem. And we've done this or things similar to this for years and years and years and years.
All right. So you ready for me to show the PowerPoint now? And you can take it from there? Yep. All right.
And we'll have more time for more questions at the end.
So this PowerPoint is just this like an opportunity for you to use this basically. I'm sorry. There we go. I can't get it to work very well because of the way that Zoom is set up. So this is just like an overview of a general PowerPoint. Now it does say Archdiocese of Cincinnati down in the bottom. This is completely editable. So you can take this and do whatever you want with this. You can change things around, make the prayer different, whatever. But I'm gonna kind of go through this, and Sarah's gonna talk us through it.
Yeah, and so we've done it, and what we think works nicely for kind of the way we did it was 4 sessions. So we have 4 of these PowerPoints, but they're all really similar. So we're only going to show you one of them, but you all really can make this what you want. You can do 8 sessions, you can do 1 and just pick and choose what you think is the most important, or however you want to do things. But this is the way we've formatted it. And we even have a schedule to kind of show you how we kept to that schedule, and you can edit the schedule for yourself. So you can follow almost exactly what we did. And if you do that, everything is done for you, or you can make tons of changes and it can still be very successful because the videos are all kind of a fairly standalone thing. So we always start every session with a prayer. And what's that red dot?
Sorry, I was getting ready to click next and I just held it for a second.
Yeah, so we always start with a prayer, and then I think the next thing is the schedule. So on here we have the schedule, and you would obviously want to edit this, but what's nice about us putting it on here is you can see how much time we gave each thing. And the timings that we chose for the schedule, we stuck really closely to this and it worked well. You always, of course, want to be flexible, and you might have to make changes on the fly, but it's not been a big problem for us. Keep in mind with this schedule is this was for Zoom. Mm-hmm. So, and when we've done these in person, the dialogues, people want longer. You talk more in person. There's something about Zoom versus in person that you talk more and you talk more casually, and people need a little bit more time in person. Also, people get up and go to the bathroom and do things when you're in person. So these are really key. We have 2 pages of best practices that we go over with everyone. And for the first session, we go really deep on these, not super deep, but we go over them thoroughly. And then on the rest of the sessions, we just kind of do quick reminders. So I'll go over them with you all so you can kind of see, and definitely with these, if you have a question, put it in the chat. I want to make sure these are totally clear. Some of them are super basic. Stay engaged. I don't think I need to go over that one. Share airtime. So if you're talking a lot, and this is something that facilitators, this is probably the biggest thing facilitators need to help with, which is not that hard, is you have introverts and you have extroverts and you have people that like to talk more and people that like to talk less. And so we just ask people that if they're one of those people that likes to talk more, or they're really passionate on this topic, for them to be aware that they need to be listening and sharing that airtime with others when they're in that small group dialogue. And a tip for facilitating is that if you're in person, talking items are really helpful, like a candle, a stick, anything in someone's hand. It's like a reminder that they need to pass that on.
Yes. And Sara, one of our questions is, do we allocate time for everyone to introduce themselves, or do they just introduce themselves in the small group?
Great question. I think it depends on how big the large group is. If it's a small, large group, I would probably give everyone time to introduce. If it's 40, 50 people, don't do that. Don't do that. But definitely when they're in the small groups, the first small group, they should definitely go around and introduce themselves. In fact, one of the times that we ran the workshop, we forgot to have them do that. And then some of the small groups did and some didn't. And there was some big feedback of like, it's really awkward when you don't introduce yourself and you're talking about these really deep or difficult topics. That's hard. You have to feel like you at least a little bit know someone if you're going to talk about those things. So those quick introductions make a big difference. So definitely do that in the small groups for sure.
Do you keep the same small groups from session to session?
Good question. So it really depends on the format of things and how in and out people are. So we usually do not, because things are too chaotic. We encourage people to come to every single session, and the majority do, but there's enough that come to session 1, but not 2, and then 3, but not 4, and whatnot, because people's schedules are hard and they want to come to some, but they can't come to them all. And that happens. And we allow that to happen for us. And then it's easier on us if we don't stress over keeping the same small groups, because it's a little bit chaotic to keep track of that and becomes a lot to manage. And we haven't found that it's worthwhile enough to manage that. But you might decide differently. If you're holding this with like a group that's really consistent about meeting and you're just going to do this as a program with that group, then it would probably be a lot easier to have the same small groups throughout. And I do think it is a worthwhile thing to do if it can be done.
I agree. Yeah. Well, and I think if you're doing it in person, having people in the same small group would be a lot easier than doing it on Zoom. With Zoom,
they go to their table.
Yeah. It takes a lot more micromanaging in the background with Zoom. Our next question is, how did you space out your sessions? Once a week, once a month, etc. So we did ours once a week for 4 weeks. Just for the consistency's sake. I think once a month you have too much of a space in between the discussion times, but it's, once again, it's totally up to what you all decide. My husband and I are in a small faith community and we meet every other week. I could see us doing one video at a time every other week for 8 weeks at some point. It just depends on what works with your community, and just keep your community members in mind as you're planning that.
Yeah. And I highly suggest, like what Noelle brought up, like if you already have a group that meets consistently, just keep that schedule. Just do that. That's going to get you the most people or the most like solid experience. If you try to do something else, then you might get less people or whatnot. If you have groups that already meet regularly, go with those. That's a great way to do it.
Yes. The next question, do we split spouses and partners into different small groups? So one of I would too. One of our things is, though, when we've Zoomed, sometimes people are sitting next to each other and Zooming together on a device. So in that situation, it's pretty impossible to split people up. But like I would, unless you're doing this in a small faith, I had mentioned my husband and I participate with other couples in a small faith community, definitely divide people in the same household up, because then you get a little bit more, less reliant on another person's perspective and start analyzing your own a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is have grace, be patient with yourself and others. And that's super simple, but it's super hard. The biggest thing that's getting at is we're all at different starting points. We're all at different places in this journey. And so have grace with yourself on that and have grace with others. I know it can be really hard when you maybe know a lot on a topic and you're really passionate about it, and then you hear someone say something that's fairly ignorant. It's hard. It's just like, ugh. It's frustrating. You want to call them out or you want to tell them where they're wrong. And I'm not saying not to do those things, but to just start from a place of grace and assuming good intentions, and also applauding that they are starting this journey instead of punishing them for starting the journey. I think that's an important thing to think about, is if people are nervous to start a journey of learning more about something and engaging with a topic, and then the first experience with that is people telling them how wrong they are and how ignorant they are, they might not come back and they might want to come and learn more. So it's just a really important thing to think about. And to also, if you're that person that's at the entry of this, or maybe you're 10 years down the road, but you know you still make a lot of mistakes, have grace with yourself. We're all doing the best we can. So just continue doing the best you can and continue choosing to learn and grow. Speak your truth. And a huge key part there is so speak from your own experience, speak the things that you have learned are true. And yeah, just completely speak from your experience. You don't need to share other people's experiences. You don't need to share someone else's story. Just speak from your experience or your thoughts on the video and the questions, if that makes sense. So it sometimes is really tempting to come in and tell someone else's experience, and that's theirs to tell. Notice your judgments or defensiveness. This is a hard topic, and it's really easy as a white person in this country to feel defensive on this and to learn new facts and immediately go to wanting to say that that fact's not correct, or I'm not a part of that, or I haven't benefited from that, or whatnot. But if your brain's always going there, then you're not really going to hear it. So speak from that, or not speak, get in that mindset of getting away from the defensiveness. And then this is one of the ones we mentioned, we added, be mindful of partisan politics and being needlessly divisive. So we really think you can talk about most of this without bringing up specific partisan politics or specific politicians, and just really getting in that mindset of realizing, thinking like, if I say this and someone disagrees with this politics, is this going to be helpful? And the answer is usually not. So while politics are extremely related to this topic, going partisan really closes a lot of people's ears. Okay. So we are all teachers and learners. So really realizing that everyone in the small group has something to bring to the table, and also that we all have something to learn from that group. Respect confidentiality. This is a big one that is obvious, but like a lot of times we just don't think about it, and we're maybe leave a session and we're excited to talk about something. And it's just really important to realize that in these small groups, for them to work well, they do need to be fairly confidential. So people shouldn't be going around and sharing someone else's story from their small group. And also that goes with the large group. A lot of times we leave a little bit of time to share something impactful from the small group. And sometimes really personal things from the small groups get shared, and that's fine with the person's permission. So if someone really wants to share something, we always ask them to get that permission before. So acknowledge ouch moments. So several of these guidelines or best practices have kind of gone over, like, we're all at different places in the journey. We all have something to learn. And that's basically the idea. Some of us might say something without intention, but we might say something that's offensive. And so leaving it open that someone else can say like, hey, that hurts me, or I just think that is like offensive in general or whatnot, and acknowledge that, but not in like a heated way. Just acknowledge it so that that person can see that point of view and learn something, and hopefully that person can get out of the defensive mindset and be like, oh, I didn't realize that. So that's an important one to point out, that there might be ouch moments. It's not usually a huge problem, but they can happen. Listen to understand, not just to respond. So we really want to ask people to think of the most important thing that's going to be in these small groups is the listening part. And a lot of times we aren't good listeners, like almost all of us. We always want to have something really interesting to say or whatnot. And we might be thinking like, oh, I want to say this, or, oh, I have something I want to say about that, what that person just said. Instead, just encourage people to step back from that and just completely listen. And then when it's their turn to talk, even if they need a moment of quiet to think about what they want to say, then they can have it. And with that idea, I'll skip down to the last one, which is expect and allow silence. This is a difficult topic, and sometimes people need processing time. Also, some people are introverts and they have to have that processing time. And if everything's talking all the time, you're not going to hear from some of the introverts, and that's a problem. So we really want to encourage the small groups to allow awkward silence and really encourage the extroverts to not just pounce the silence. Because if every extrovert is pouncing the silence, the introverts will not be talking, or a lot of them won't. So expect and allow silence. Let there be that awkward silence, and it can feel awkward, but just ask everyone to lean into that, to give people that time to process and to let people's brains have a break for a second. And then the second to last one, but the last one in this order is expect and accept non-closure. So while there's 8 videos and we've designed this as a 4-part series, it is still just like barely breaking through. Covers a lot of things, but because of the time, the videos are about 11 to 15 minutes each. They cannot go super deep, and our conversations can only be so long, so they cannot always go super deep. So we're not going to get closure on everything. We're not going to be experts on this topic. This is just another point in our journey of being anti-racist Catholics.
All right. So these are just some of the questions.
Yeah, so we're not going to go over those. Those are in the discussion guide and they're right here, but we just found it helpful with Zoom especially to have the questions up. Although in person, if you're going to have a way to project anything, we always have done projection when we've done in person, of like having these parts up, and having the questions up is helpful, especially if you don't want to print tons of questions out for people and stuff.
A great thing too is if you're doing this on Zoom, take those questions and have them ready to go and post them in the chat before you break into your small groups, because then everyone gets the questions and they have them available right there in their small group in the chat. And that just keeps people on task a lot easier than having to I know you can make those little comments up at the top on Zoom, but those are very fleeting and they don't last very long. So it's hard to stay on task when you have that going on. So usually we just post it in the chat off to the side for people as well. So, all right. So next we're going to show you some of the printable materials really quickly. And I'm just going to share that. All right. So this is our printable leader guide that you're welcome to print, modify, and use. They're just things that you should think about as you prepare. As we've talked about a little bit already, you want to make sure you have enough facilitators and that those small groups stay fairly small. And like we said, it's up to you if you have the consistent small groups or if you mix it up every meeting. You want to make sure that you're scheduling and promoting the workshop. And we have flyers that we're going to show you in a second. Have a registration so you have the right amount of facilitators lined up, and try to ask people to be consistent in their attendance. It's really important. And just take the time to look through all the materials and review the videos and stuff in advance. We've got all of the information about just like some of the basics. We don't need to go through all of these things, but introductions and opening prayers. Take time to encourage people to look at those bios of the speakers so they can understand that these aren't people that are just talking about something that they know very little about. These are experts in this particular area that they're speaking about, to give them the credit that they deserve, and to thank them also for all of the work they put into this for free, which was really wonderful, and we're so grateful. One of the things you really want to take time to look over is just the small group and large group debrief. You want to make sure that you're giving people the opportunity to share, and that you're guiding those conversations in a positive way. Anything else you want to add to this, Sarah?
No.
Nope. All right. So
I will say, like, I think sometimes it feels overwhelming, or like your facilitators need to be trained so well because anything could happen, and so on and so forth. And I just want to encourage you all that it's going to be okay. Your facilitators are not going to be that well trained, and that's okay. Just choose people that you think have good people skills and can be kindly assertive. They don't need to be super assertive people, but people that are able to be assertive when it's truly necessary, and they have good listening skills, and then give them the guidelines and they'll be fine. I promise they will. We've done this so many times, and that's all we've done, and it's been fine. It's been great.
Yes.
So these do not need to be expert facilitators that have had some sort of special training. if you have that in your parish, you have a group of expert facilitators, definitely have them do it. That would be awesome. But we've just used a lot of random volunteer facilitators, and it's been great.
Right. So here's a question. Have you ever had the group watch the videos on their own so that there's more time for discussion? We have not.
Except for video one.
Yeah, except for video one. But if you have a group of people that you know are going to be really reliable about that, I would say definitely that's an option. One of the things I am concerned about in situations like that is a lot of times people don't do their homework, and so it's really hard to have these conversations in a group if like 2 out of the 5 people haven't watched the video because they ran out of time that week. So just giving and it kind of refreshes your memory too. If you watch the video days before you have time for the discussion, it's a little less present in your mind, but I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. It just offers a little bit more of a reminder and an opportunity for everybody to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I totally agree. I am people. You said people don't always do their homework. I am people. I have ADHD. I have 3 kids, including 2 infants. I have a full-time job, blah, blah. I can have the best of intentions of be so passionate on a topic and then be like, I didn't know where to fit it in. So I would totally be the person that would show up and be like, I still wanted to come, but I didn't do what I was supposed to do beforehand. And those people all, I'm sure, have good intentions, but it just is not going to go that well if barely anyone's watched them. And they're not that long. So I would really make it a part of the thing. But here, your groups better than we do. If you have like a Bible study group where they pre-read the passage, or a book study group, or a group that maybe has done videos before, but they pre-watch the video and then come and discuss it. If you have a group that already meets and does that and they do it, then yeah, totally expect them to do it beforehand, and maybe tell them to just do it that day or the day before so that it's fresh. But otherwise I would probably not do that.
Right. So this right here that we have up right now is just an example of one of those. You can see the flyer, right? Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. All right. So this is one of those editable flyers. You can just type in your church and everything like that right there, and then print it if you want to. This one is very bold and it really makes a statement, but to save ink, we also have this very simple version that you are welcome to use as well. So both of those are up there and available for you on our webpage. Like we said before, anything that we have, with the exception of that discussion guide, you're welcome to modify and do whatever you would like with them.
And you don't need to use those flyers. Those are just, I know when I used to work in a parish, not every parish staff or volunteer is comfortable with flyer making and making something that they feel looks good. So we just kind of decided to throw those up for people to use if that made them more comfortable.
Right. Yeah, you can take it and make it your own, however you would like. So, and maybe before I exit, I'll put together some social media posts for people to use too. That would make it easier for people to just throw it up on social media. So another question, so feel free, I think we're kind of entering the Q&A section of the day. And we've kind of been doing that as we go, but if there are, I see another question in the chat, but if you have more, throw those in the chat, or then after we answer this one, you can unmute and ask some questions if you want. If you use an 8-week schedule and use select resources recommended with each section, are you able to go more deeply into the topic? Absolutely. That's kind of my game plan with the students at UD. I just took a class on social justice. And so my project that I'm going to do for this class is to take this program and tie it in with the pillars of Catholic social teaching, and do an 8-week plan with the students. We'll have the discussion and dive a little bit deeper on each of the topics that we're addressing in some capacity, and really pull in those pillars and talk about how they connect with each of the topics that this addresses. So you can take this, and we've created this as something that you can take it and make it your own. Absolutely. Knowing that we haven't seen the videos yet, do you include Catholic social teaching on racism within the materials? Or is this something we would need to add to the presentation materials? They're somewhat included. It's not explicit. Do you want to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's all based on the Catholic social teaching on racism, but it's not hammered over your head of explicit quoting popes or bishops or anything like that. Not at all. But it is all from a Catholic perspective. And the introduction video and the last
Closing.
the conclusion are the most explicitly Catholic, other than Sister Nicole's video is all about her experience as a Black Catholic in this country. But the other videos are like not as Catholic, although they're very much within our Catholic social teaching on these topics. Yeah, so we chose the intro and the conclusion to really frame it more heavily as a Catholic topic, but they're still not, if you really want, or you feel that your group really needs to have like those quotes from bishops and Pope, etc., then yeah, definitely I would dig that out and put those in the slides or with the discussion guide, or print off the Open Wide Our Hearts, etc. For sure, do that, because ours is not going to be like explicit bullet points or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the focus of this video, like these videos, like we said, is definitely addressing the issues within the Catholic Church, but to start seeing the systemic issues that are present as well. There's really a benefit of pulling in Catholic social teaching and maybe addressing that more explicitly in some contexts. So that could even be something that you do on that last day, since you're only going to watch that singular video and maybe hit on those principles a little bit. We leave you some time on that final day, since there's just one video, to go a little deeper. With the understanding that this presentation is being recorded, does this mean we will be able to utilize this in helping to get more people in our parish involved and on board to allow this to be presented? Yeah, I don't know what context we will be sharing this presentation, so I may ask Erin if she wants to share that.
I think, do you mean like to be able to show it to other leaders to help them understand? Is that what's being asked?
Yes.
Yes, okay. That is up to ISN.
Yeah, as long as it's okay with Sara and Noelle. Obviously we're recording, so I will send this video out to anybody who's registered. And then of course it'll be on YouTube. You can share the YouTube link with folks within your community as well. And then I will also touch base with Sara and Noelle to see other resources that we might want to link along with it. Obviously we'll link their website, but anything more specific. But you should see that in your email inbox sometime next week.
Yes. Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, I don't see anything just yet. So I just want to thank you all for coming, and we're really hopeful and excited about possibly having this spread a little bit. It was a lot of work and from a lot of really wonderful people that took time to donate their time and their talent to this program. And we're just really hopeful that it can be something that is a great tool, so nobody else has to reinvent the wheel.
Thanks to you both, Sara and Noelle, both for sharing this. And it really is an incredible resource. And I'm really impressed even with the way that you've shared all of the documents on the website. It makes it so easy. Like you said, as a community, we don't need to be reinventing the wheel. It's incredible to be able to share resources so widely. And like you said, with so many people on this call from all over the country. Yeah, I'm excited to see additional groups delve into that. So like I said, we'll share this recording later this week, and I'll put some additional resources in the email. Sara, Noelle, maybe we can touch base too to see if you're open to sharing your contact info should people have follow-up questions for you, etc.
Yeah, and Noelle, since she's leaving her position super soon, we didn't put her contact information on the website. But mine is all over the website as like the contact person for help. And I am more than happy, even though I don't know if the higher ups would love me to say this, but I'm more than happy to help anyone who wants to use this resource, use it. I'm happy to take phone calls or hop on Zoom if we need some visuals or anything to help you implement this in your community, I would love to do that. We spent so much time on this resource and got some amazing professors and staff at UD to help us. And we just want it used by as many people as possible. So I'm happy to help if you want to bounce anything off of me or learn how to do anything with it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. And I just put my, my new email for my upcoming new job in the chat. So I'm also happy to help in any way. I just won't be an Archdiocesan staff member anymore, but UD contributed to this as well. So I'll be on staff there.
Yeah. And even though mine's on the website, I put my email in the chat for anyone.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.